Hello, my name is Shavandria Jack, and I am a student in the Modern American Literature class. Today, I will start off by talking about modern American literature and how I feel about it. Coming into this course, I was not a big fan of modern American literature, just to be honest, but through some of the assigned readings, they made me curious about modern American literature, especially when I learned that most modern American literature was focused on real life problems, emotions, and societal changes. Well, if we think about things like the outcast of people, political corruption, racism, the struggle for survival, it is still all relevant today. People are always going to be outcast. It doesn't matter. There's always going to be a specific race of people who are going to be outcast. It existed then, and it's going to exist now, and it's going to exist in the future. The struggles for survival. Currently, people are still struggling for survival. If we talk about shelter, people are struggling with shelter and just providing shelter for their families with high increased prices of rent and mortgages. People are in survival when it comes to food because the food prices are so high. People are in survival when it comes to gas because the gas prices are high. So people everywhere are still struggling. It doesn't matter if you have a job or if you don't have a job. Or if you don't have a job, of course you're struggling. But if you do have a job, then you're still struggling. Political corruption. Political corruption has been going on for decades. And I do mean decades. And there is a lot of political corruption going on, in my opinion, in today's society. It's not going to stop. As well as racism. Racism has always been a big thing across American people. And coming from an African American woman, I'm not speaking of racism just for African Americans because there are many races who have faced racism at some point. And all of those things are in the past and are still relevant today. So that brings me into discussing one of the pieces that kind of was a favorite for me, and it was "We Wear the Mask." And "We Wear the Mask," I saw myself in so many ways. I saw myself just one as being a woman, two as being a black woman, three I saw myself as relearning how to talk, relearning how to walk, relearning how to wear my hair to fit a standard look that I thought people were looking for. I talked about in one of my papers about a job that I had received that one of my good friends had gotten me. Quite naturally, I didn't qualify for the job, but through her, I was able to get the job and I interviewed perfectly. When I got on the job, it was only probably three or four black women and the rest were white. And I don't want to make it a race thing, but in this situation, I felt like I immediately had a mask over my face. I was not respected. A lot of the women did not speak to me. It took almost a week for someone to introduce themselves to me. I remember going in, I used to wear my hair twisted out. And one day, one of the young ladies, she was like, "Is that a wig?" And I know that she knew that it wasn't a wig, um, but I took it as she didn't like it or it wasn't appropriate for the role that I was in. So I started to wear my hair in softer styles with getting it pressed out and wearing it long and, just changing myself, being someone who I wasn't. I talked about having to say affirmations in the morning before I walked in. I used to practice smiling consistently. I used to practice my vocabulary, because I could come off as being aggressive, but not intentionally. It's just me. But there were lots of adjustments that I had to do. And I remember in that reading, there was one quote that stood out to me, and it said, "With torn and bleeding hearts, we smile, and mouthed with merry subtitles." And I think behind that, I began to realize how much trauma was behind the mask, how much grief was behind the mask, how much suffering was behind the mask, how much brokenness was behind the mask, how much of feeling less than was behind the mask. And then I started thinking about like my parents and my grandparents on how they felt, because I come up in a different era where things are a lot better than they were for them when they came up. But I can still feel that I was different. I can still feel the outcast that was there. I can still feel the brokenness. And I remember just always having a smile to put on a mechanism of happiness. And I realized that in this life that I've lived, I've been taught that that's what people who look like me have been taught. And so that particular reading, I saw a mirror reflection of my life, and We Were the Mask. And it was so profound to read, and it really gave me a different outlook at how I see myself through that reading. And I'm so grateful for it, because I now say to myself, you no longer wear the mask. You don't have to wear the mask. Be yourself, and people are going to accept you for who you are. Like, and if they don't accept you for who they are, who you are, guess what? It's okay. It is totally okay. And I know we was asked to talk about one, but there is another one that I do want to discuss, and it's the Revolt of Mother. Also, in that writing, it was a beautiful writing. It described what so many women go through in relationships, and how they handle situations, how they don't feel that they have a voice, or the lack of communication in a relationship, or allowing our presence to just be known, and being able to set boundaries. So the revolt of Mother, I also saw myself in that. And I was able to resonate with that particular reading, because as a woman, we want to be submissive. We want to listen. We want to let a man lead. We want to let him direct us. And that doesn't mean that we don't have the voice to voice an opinion. We don't have the voice to say, hold on, like, let's talk about that, or that's wrong, or that's not the way that it's supposed to be done. And so those two pieces of writing, it made me reflect on myself. It made me reflect in my life, coming from a woman who has worn masks on several occasions, and who is now growing into herself and saying, you don't have to be a mask. Allow people to accept you for who you are, and be okay with that. And then also in the Revolt of Mother, being a woman who has an opinion, being a woman who speaks up, being a woman who knows how to communicate, being a woman who set boundaries, being a woman who is proud of who she is, but also being a woman who knows her place in a relationship as well as in society. So I'm very appreciative, and through those readings, I've honestly gotten a better yearning and growing and wanting to learn more about modern American literature, because history is so important. History is a makeup of us, and we need to read more about history to understand who and what we are, and where we come from, and why we behave the way we behave, and why we think the way that we think. And just knowing that history is, I mean, not history, but literature, modern American literature is based off of real life situations. It's based off of emotions. It's based off of societal changes. It makes me want to read more about it. So I'm excited to have more assignments to read about, as well as writing. It is bringing me out of my shell with being able to express myself, and I'm so appreciative for this class. I am so appreciative for this class. And I think that's pretty much all. I want to say I described everything that you asked for in the rubrics, in terms of giving my thoughts around literature, a quote that stood out. I discussed the reading, and then I told why it was resonated with me personally. I hope I'm not leaving anything out. This was therapeutic too. I'm usually shy. I don't know how I would have talked to you if he was actually sitting here. Um, but yeah, anyways, all right. Thank you. Good night.